Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for coming along here. We'll probably, over the course of the next few minutes, get a continuing list of people who are joining us, because that's 'twas ever thus. Even in the real world, people come in after we've started. However, we will start because we've got just about 30 minutes in order to get through a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Williams. Welcome to our fourth session on Agile Procurement. And as usual, we have our two Agile Procurement experts with us at the moment, Mirko Kleiner of Lean-Agile Procurement and David Kershaw of Curshaw Consultants, both of whom have been giving us, I think, some extraordinarily valuable insight into the way procurement can become more agile as a function. And this session, which we're running live, benefits from a bunch of questions that have been submitted beforehand, which I hope will get us even further insight into agile procurement and how beneficial it can be. We're going to record this session. We are indeed recording it now for replay, so if those people who miss it or anybody wants to see it again, we'll be able to do so. Can I just, as a point of housekeeping, ask everybody to put their microphones on mute so that we don't get any inadvertent entertainment. And we will be going through a couple of questions. We'll try and keep it to about 5 minutes a question if we can, so that we get through enough. And that's enough from me. So, Mirko and David, welcome. And whoever is it possibly, oh no, it's not, it's all right, it's muted now, good, okay. Right, okay, gentlemen, welcome to the session, and nice to see you both, actually. Thank you. I'll dive straight in to the questions that we've got. The first one of which I don't find at all surprising, but you might. And actually, can we have from the two of you a clear and crisp definition of what agile procurement is? David, can I come to you first for that one?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, you could speak all day about using all the agile ways of working to do things, but for me, agile procurement is simply using the agile ways of working to deliver procurement quicker, faster, and more based around the user needs. Now, you know, we in procurement, I'm a procurement person, and for some reason, things are complex, difficult, long-winded, bureaucratic, and there are reasons for those. But it's our job now to sort of think back and say, to sit back and go, right, what can we do to reduce all that so we can deliver things quicker, especially in the current climate we're in globally?
Excellent. Thank you, David. Mirko.
Yeah, so thanks, David and John. I'm very happy that David started as a procurement person, because I'm not. I'm an agile guy. So from my point of view, it just, you know, it's just another function from my perspective that the agile community has kind of forgotten. And it suffers, especially if it comes to complex sourcing cases, that they are applying still the old way of working, a more transactional way of doing things, following a rigid process, as David said. And what we are doing, or my aim, is to bring in, with the help of agile practices, also change the way we do things in a more collaborative way. And everything, and this is on top of it over time, we would also like to change the culture. So less of having this take it or leave it, and this more confrontive way of doing things, just mentioning negotiation, which is less on the same eye level. We're in complex cases, often strategic cases, we are looking more for a partnership. And there, all the agile values apply very nicely with great outcome, I must say, from our experience.
Okay, so that's actually really helpful. So if we think about it as procurement is a function which is in need of a more flexible way to deliver the customer value, the outcome that you want to achieve, and agility is an opportunity, agile methodologies are an opportunity. Or maybe I should say agile mindset and agile culture, as you mentioned, Mirko. And I'm quite interested in that idea about the culture, because that's a very profound change. This is not just about we shall do this way. way. Culture is about what happens inside people's heads and the way that they approach challenges. So is there one of the questions that was asked is what's the value of agile procurement compared with the way procurement has traditionally been done? Is there something in there which is more than just lower cost or quicker delivery?
So for me, I think it's quicker delivery, absolutely quicker delivery. Traditionally, as a procurement person, I would sit in an office away from my internal client, which I call user, my internal user. And for me, if I would go and only see them once a week or once a fortnight or a month, I don't really learn about their thing. Equally, they don't learn about my thing. My thing's procurement, be it legal matters, be it regulations, processes. So for me, it's all about delivery. The first thing I would say to anybody is move out of your procurement physical location, and it's great now we're using technology to do that, and go and sit with your internal users, learn about their thing, and also let them learn about your thing. Explain why there are various things to jump through. Maybe they'll come up with an idea of how you don't need to jump through that thing. Maybe there's a way around that. And that's not about breaking the law. It's about looking back and saying, actually, is this policy fit for today?
Right. So there's in a sense, it's a different way of looking at things. As we said, it might be impacting the culture. Mirko, do you think that can spill over beyond the pure procurement function?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have come a long way in the Agile community with the, let's just think back years where we started to include quality assurance to the development team. And then later on, we thought about, hey, we need to have the business in the driver's seat. So the product owner became an important role in the whole setup. And I totally agree with David. It's all about delivery, right? Delivering faster value to the customer. But beside that, procurement or the whole sourcing, as I call it, and procurement is much more than that, is just another capability an agile team needs to get familiar with, as it used to be in quality assurance or security or operations. So we are just extending the DevOps idea to the other end. And by doing that, we are also changing the culture dramatically internally. So what we are looking for in a more agile way of sourcing is not just getting the right partner or the right product or service. It's also about having the right, the best cultural and social fit with our partners, right? Because the other thing we did in the past already, but now we need it much faster. And we started with Lean-Agile Procurement, the approach with the hypothesis, what if we had to sign a contract within one day, right? So that therefore we need to organize totally different. And if you look at this strange, weird question, yeah, you will come up. We need a cross-functional team of experts at the table. We need the engagement with the end users at the same time. We need the decision takers at the same table. We even need to include the potential partners, the vendors, in such a session. And it's just crazy what can happen if we bring together the right people.
And that's a really good point. Just on that, Mirko talked about bringing agility into procurement. It's not just about sourcing. Partnerships, absolutely fundamental. Yeah. The biggest win for applying agile ways of working in the procurement world is market engagement. Speaking to your market, speaking to industry innovators, go and get them, bring them in, ask them, tell them about your problem and see how they're going to recommend that they would solve that problem. Obviously in the public sector where I do a lot of work, there are some restrictions. But before you go out to market, absolutely get them involved, get them in your teams, let them understand your problems, and be fair to all suppliers, of course, and make sure you tell people what you're doing through a blog post or other, and that will protect you from any challenge in the future.
Right, very interesting. So if we think about procurement as agile procurement as an optimized way of delivering value to the user or the customer, which sounds very trite, but actually bearing in mind the problems that we've had historically with procurement, that's a really profound shift to be able to optimize that function. It's also, by definition, as agile, flexible. We are still in the throes of the kind of shift in economy and society and behaviors in organizations that many of us have never ever seen before in our lifetime. So this COVID-19 pandemic, do you think, has it driven increased agility in procurement in order to respond more rapidly to the requirements? Or has it actually meant that people have fallen back on traditional procurement behaviors in order to slow down cash flow out of the organization?
Just to pick up on that then, John, two observations. Firstly, it's been a great success, the use of technology. I've seen all of my fellow colleagues who don't normally use things like this, virtual hosting and shared docs. We're using them now. It's great, and this is a new shift in the way we work. So for me, if we can take one good thing away from this pandemic, it is that people are working better. They're working better together. They're using technology. We are working more efficiently. So it's really quite good. The negative for this, there was a collection of knee-jerk reactions because we had to source some things, medical supplies, etc. And there's been a collection of knee-jerk reactions over the last few months, and you'd only read the papers to see that. I would hope now that procurement professionals and people who work with procurement people sort of try and find a middle of the line there and try and say, actually, we now need to do things a little more focused, less knee-jerk. Let's get some better procurement contracts going, which attract more value. But also, let's use all these new ways of working we have to actually start pushing forward agile procurement and the way we do things.
Excellent. So, Mirko, do you think the pandemic has driven agile procurement, or in a sense held it back?
Well, I think it's a definition. It's a question of definition, how you see agile, right? Has the procurement become more adaptive or faster? Absolutely, during the pandemic. I would even call it they have been working all day and night in a task force mode, right? And things became possible that seemed to be impossible just because of the crisis, because the border was closed, or they lost the connection to an important supplier and such. On the other hand, that drove the demand or the expectation level on the business side, which is now great for the movement, but it's very hard for procurement, because what I've observing out in the procurement world is that they are like we want to go back to normal instead of developing what they learned to the new normal. And this is a bit of black and white. I mean, there are people out there who enjoyed this collaborative mode of working, and there are others, more traditional thinkers. They say, well, but we have banded our governance. There were almost no processes in place anymore, etc. We need to go back to normal. So I think it's an inspiration on one hand, and I think it will also increase the business demand for such guys. And what I really liked is that it showed up the potential, what is possible.
Right. Now, that's really, really important because in an emergency, the potential for what is possible emerges straight away, as both of you have just illustrated. However, after the emergency is perceived to be over, then people want to heave a sigh of relief and then go back to that that old normal.
Mhm.
Do you think, bearing in mind that the old normal has things like annual budgets, very strict governance, lots and lots of oversight, do you think that the illustration that the governance and the financing and everything else can be different has been sufficient to help people avoid falling back into that old normal in the future?
So I think, to pick up on Mirko's point about black and white 50-50, I think we're still in that mode. We're going to still see people that want to do things the traditional way, and that's fine for some projects and programs. For the sourcing and procurement of digital services, technology, novel things that are quite complex and difficult, I think that it is our job, the people that are in the Agile Procurement movement, Mirko, myself, John, your organisation, and many more, it's our job to now start working with governance colleagues, finance colleagues, planners, and say, actually, you don't have to. Why are we waiting for an annual event? Come and be in the room with us, be it a virtual room, be it a physical room, be in the program. Let's spend a bit of time forming the team to work out how people like to work, when they like to work, what are their minimum viable products within their world. So for me, as a public sector procurement specialist, I can't break the law. I don't want to break the law. I don't like breaking the law. So my minimum thing for me is don't break the law and get the thing that the internal user needs. So we need to find a balance, and bringing those people in from finance, governance, quality assurance, etc., is fundamental. And I think there's a huge appetite for that now.
Right, good. Mirko, what do you think? Can we resist this slip back into the old normal?
Well, in my opinion, we need to respect where the current people, functions, and organizations are. And if there is a rigid budgeting process, it's just as it is. So as an agile person, I would say, let's leave that for the moment. But if we get a budget, let's say it's worth it to spend 100 millions, why we should source for the 100 millions. So what can we do within this given boundaries, right? So let's, if time to market is crucial, and David just mentioned before, an MVP, minimum viable product. So let's source, spend the first million or 100K, and let's see if our hypotheses are correct, if the market demands it really, and so forth. So I would say, even though agile procurement becomes more and more of a huge topic with very different aspects and things that need to be changed and transformed, we need to ask ourselves, what's the next baby step we can take, right? What can we do tomorrow to improve? And that's what we usually do in a transformation either, right?
And that's really important. It goes back to the definition. You know, definition is about delivery, is about incremental, small incremental, iterative releasing of small products. So in my world, if I'm writing a contract, I want to, next time I'm going to change a bit to make it a bit easier to read, or revise one of the important clauses. And if you do that multiple times over a period of time, things get easier and people are more interested to be involved and engaged with procurement. And actually, people in your organization who are non-procurement people start becoming mini experts on procurement. Then that releases your procurement people to then do more interesting stuff, and everyone seems happier and more willing to go to work and have fun.
Do you know, that's really interesting that you say that, because the change is something that's very often talked about as, oh, it's very scary. People don't like to change. We have to have a process to help people change and everything else. in a sense, the value of incremental change is that if each increment is actually an improvement for most people from what was before, then actually there's usually no problem accepting that particular change. It's not too big, and actually it feels better to do it. So the value of that incremental, that iterative approach to procurement clearly demonstrates itself. What you mentioned actually, Mirko, you mentioned this idea of, again, a 100 million project. Well, okay, maybe there's 100,000 or maybe even 500,000. We can spend experimenting maybe at the front end of that to see how agile we can be. That requires an agility, an agile mindset in the finance team. Now, we've seen, of course, some movements around agile finance with beyond budgeting and stuff like this. Are you seeing an emergence of an agile mindset in finance people that you talk to around the pure procurement theme?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good and funny question. I have a story about that. We recently sourced an ERP system in just 4 weeks. Just to give some context, usually this takes companies 6 to 12 months, just the sourcing part. And ERP system traditionally is owned by the financial department. So the CFO was the sponsor. He had no clue about Agile at all. But the beauty of running this pilot case where finance became the product owner in this case, and we set up a cross-functional team, not just for sourcing, but for the whole ERP development and product lifecycle. So we had people from accounting in it, from HR, from you name it, and also procurement. So this started to build bridges within the company and spread the idea, and not just because it was successful, it was fast, not just sourcing and delivery, and it was much less costly because of focusing on business value all the time. But it also had an interesting aspect of, we created kind of promoters, right? In the finance, in others. So next thing they started was, what's next in finance? They started to introduce Kanban boards for their accounting team. How weird is that? And in the meanwhile, they also started to apply principles from beyond budgeting. It's just crazy what can happen. So for me, that was the very first time. I'm not a finance guy. That was the very first time an agile transformation started out of finance department.
So David, public sector perspective, maybe slightly different?
Hugely different. So I say, for me, there are 3 phases of procurement in the public sector. There's pre-procurement, market engagement, speaking to your industry innovators. There's the sourcing bit, the procurement bit, and there is the contract mobilization and service delivery. The middle, the procurement bit, there are lots of rules and regulations which we have to adhere to, and perhaps it's one of our jobs to challenge those and over time, slowly, iteratively, change those. But it's the first bit and the second bit where we really need to apply agile ways of working. As I mentioned before, and I won't go over it again, but bring in your everybody in to the team that's thinking about the problem. You know, how are we going to solve the problem? For years, I worked at lots of organizations, and the organizations worked out the solution, and it took 3 years to work out the solution, and the solution didn't work. The back end of that, the contract management, the delivery, contract management is a huge problem in procurement. We have this let and forget mentality. Hurry up and let the contract, then we forget about it, and it goes wrong. Now, what I would like to do is, instead of relying purely on contract managers from procurement managing the contract, let's educate the delivery managers about how to manage their contract. So,
but even David, just to interrupt you shortly, I would even go beyond. Who is responsible for the product from an agile point of view, commercially? So it, in my opinion, should become the product owner who is responsible for the contracts of services and such. So I totally agree, and there might be different solutions for how to solve that in a more agile way. But in my opinion, the team needs to get educated and also, more tightly work together with procurement professionals to make this work. And maybe not on a very super complex things, they can't do that, but the more easy ones they could start to do themselves, right?
Now, this is really, really important, because we're not just saying, okay, here's a different protocol, here's a different set of instructions, if we call it that. What we're actually expecting here is people to change their behavior to be proactively cooperative with other people around a procurement challenge or a procurement function. What I wanted to ask is, because one of the questions was, what's the most difficult thing about adopting and implementing agile procurement? And I have a feeling it might have something to do with that, getting the partnership going. But tell me, each of you, from your perspective, what's the most difficult thing about implementing agile procurement?
Mirko, by all means.
Well, yeah. So there are various things. If I would point just to one thing, is it's the culture, right? Because the problem solver of that challenge, or in sourcing and other aspects of procurement, is getting the right people together. So we need all the expertise at the same table. Now, we need to respect that all these people come from other functions with slightly different cultures and backgrounds of collaborating or even not collaborating. And that's in my opinion, the biggest challenge. And what we also, we use this also to form a new culture in this small bubble, let's say it as a pilot. And beside that, it's, in my opinion, it's empowerment. Because if the team doesn't get a certain level of empowerment, then we are back in the old traps that we need to go up the hierarchy. We need a decision on whatever technology are those the suitable 3 shortlisted partners and so on. And we lose a lot of time. So decision latency is our enemy.
Right.
Really, really strict on that. We are really, really strict on that. If you don't get a certain level of empowerment and also availability of the team members, we don't start. Then it's not important.
So that's a culture generally in approach to the procurement role. It's also actually a leadership culture which allows for that empowerment to happen. David, the biggest challenge for you? Yep.
Well, just on that, I take the empowerment. You need the C-suite, you need someone on the board to say, yes, I am prepared to take a bit of a gamble and change a procurement person's job description to say that they can be a bit more agile. Just a little bit, be a bit more agile. Because if you're a permanent employee and you may get a bonus, or you may, if you don't adhere to your personal development review on an annual basis, and you get told off by your boss because you haven't done the thing you're supposed to do, then you're not going to be risky. You're not going to actually say, I will take a bit of a gamble and try something new. So we need to actually look at the job descriptions of some of the procurement people, take some of the old stuff out, try some new things, and give them enough rope to try these new things. Like allow people to move from their procurement function into their internal user department. Allow them to understand different things and different ways the organization works. Allow them to work in multidisciplinary teams to learn how other things do things. And also allow them to be open and talk about things outside the organization.
That's a serious requirement of agility in the leadership team there, I think, actually. But it does, what does come out of there, the culture within the function is one of the barriers, but also one of the opportunities, and the culture in the leadership teams in allowing that agility to emerge in procurement. Okay, we are about 1 minute, I think, away from the end here. So I would like, if I can, to just sum up in response to some of the questions that we've had. In terms of a definition of agile procurement, I think what we've come to is it's a flexible version of an existing function, which when agility is applied, actually provides for faster delivery of value to to the user or the customer. So it's an existing function, actually just applied in a different way, a more agile way. There is a requirement for us to respect traditional ways of procurement, because as you both said, actually agile isn't for absolutely everything, and actually tradition works. And partly tradition works because there's a reason why things became traditional. There was a rationale for them in the first place. It's important in an agile procurement process to include that halo of teams around the procurement team, whether it's finance or operations or risk or whatever it is, partly to create advocates and promoters for the function, but also to create real partnerships, people who get engaged in the procurement process. Because, and this is, I think, it seems to me the outcome of our conversations, the idea is to make procurement, agile procurement, everybody's role in the organization, everybody to have a stake in an efficient, effective, and agile procurement process. Is that, just in summing up, would you agree with that? One word, yes or no?
Yes.
That's the first time I've ever heard either of you just use one word in response to a question. That was very concise. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, gentlemen, I hope our audience have enjoyed that. Again, for me, some amazing insights in a very short space of time, actually, in response to some specific questions there. I'd like to thank you both, Mirko Kleiner from Lean-Agile Procurement and David Kershaw of Curshaw Consultants, for your time today. As I mentioned, we are recording this, so it will be available for replay later on, and for those people who haven't seen it. And we will absolutely, because we still have questions that were not answered, be doing more of these sessions in the future. I look forward very much to seeing all of you on those sessions. I thank both of our guests very, very much indeed. Have a very good week and weekend, and we'll see you at the next Agile Procurement session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.